Did you know that in this universe, Vera Farmiga is the daughter of Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston?
No.
I just made that up. So,
Oh my god. I was like, "What the is that a WB intern typing that in?"
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
I
finally
Watched.
I
finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. I'm Milan.
and this is David, and today I finally watched Godzilla, King of Monsters.
So, I have not watched the full movie, but when I was traveling for work in my hotel room, they have those TVs that like just play, random shit on them all the time and the ending of this movie was playing in like shit D, like very low quality. So I was watching it and I was like, oh man, that looks so cool. Like they brought everyone for this one, right? And
Right.
then watching it with all of that in context this time, I was like, okay.
Um, I know I told you previously that when I was editing the last couple of episodes that I'm cursing too much. But having said that, the beginning of this movie is fucking bonkers. I was talking with Garrett and he was like, "Oh yeah, I recently watched all these movies." I was like, "The beginning's so convoluted." And he's like, "What do you mean?" So I wrote this in a text. Kyle Chandler and Vera Farmiga, who are from Boston, so happen to be in San Francisco when Godzilla is there in 2014. Their son dies as a result. They are also responsible for creating tech that can communicate and control the Titans, was originally used for orcas. In their grief, Kyle Chandler turns to drinking while Vera Farmiga hatches a plan to release all the Titans, thereby killing a sizable population on the planet, but reversing the disastrous effects humans have caused on the planet.
That's probably one of the most eloquent things you've ever said on this podcast.
That's the plot of Godzilla King of Monsters, and I
I
don't really
didn't
understand.
I, I didn't get that he started drinking.
He says it.
We never see it.
He says I drank. What do you mean? Why does it matter? He says I drank after our son died.
I guess it starts to show like the faults of this movie when you can't show but tell the audience that your character is an
Well,
alcoholic.
well, here's another thing. First of all, so Zhang Ziyi is in this movie, and I was like, wow, that woman is very attractive in this movie. And then afterwards, I realized it was Zhang Ziyi, who for my entire fucking life has looked the exact same and has always been that attractive. Like, has not aged since Rush Hour in the early 2000s. But second of all, I bring her up to say that she's playing twins in this movie, and I didn't realize. Just at one point, someone calls her Dr. Chen, and then at another point, someone called her Dr. Ling, and I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, that's the woman that was with Mothra, but now she's on the ship. But it was twins.
One had short hair, one had long hair.
Did they?
I think so, yeah. It cuts back to this guy. You remember the black guy scientist who like never appeared? I know him as Cyborg's dad from Justice League, but I'm pretty sure he's more famous than that. Um but he is the one with Mothra. He goes to her twin. Uh
Yeah. Well, I don't.
they
Yeah.
can't
Okay. Yeah. Isn't he the guy from Joe Morton? He's from Terminator 2 is like the most famous thing he's been
Yes.
in.
Yes. Cyborg's dad from Justice League. Good job, Alon. Anyways, shut up. Anyways, so the camera
You run up to
pans.
him at a convention. Aren't you Cyborg's dad? He's like, what the fuck?
We get it. Um the camera pans around to like reveal her. And I was just like, isn't this just the same fucking woman? Like I was confused too. It was like this big reveal. I was like, I guess they're twins. Because she then shows a picture of them. Of both of them. And And I was like, all right, I guess that's what we're supposed to understand from this.
You know what? But it's some when she showed that picture, she's like, "Yeah, my mom used to do this, and my grandma." And so I was like, just yeah, I never put two and two together. Their hair
They
looked the
were
same.
all twins.
But the other thing that you and I talked about before this is like, just out of nowhere, Vera Farmiga becomes like this fucking psychopath, and then
Wait. Don't
the
you want to? Shouldn't we get through the plot and when we get to that?
nah, who cares? My
Okay.
point is, the movie. Then you have Millie Bobby Brown who plays her daughter. And like in the beginning, she's writing an email to her dad, like, I think mom's going crazy. But then, like, throughout the movie, it seems like she kind of knows about this plan.
Yeah, she was like, "This is not what we talked about, Mom." And then she was like the mom lied to her about like, "Oh, we're gonna free the beasts, but they're not gonna kill anyone, honey." And
But no,
Millie Bobby Brown was just like, "Oh, okay."
but I will say that, like, what she said is like, Mom, you said that they were going to restore balance, which is what Vera Farmiga had said like a little bit earlier in the movie.
Well,
But it
okay.
still was like, Millie Bobby Brown got on board very quickly if she didn't know about this beforehand.
Well, she's like 14 and it's her mom. So like I don't know what you want from her, dude. But the thing is that they were going to release Ghidorah thinking, "Oh, okay. Ghidorah is like the king of the monsters. Oh, look at that." And then you realize later on, and so do they, that Ghidorah isn't part of the natural order. Ghidorah's a fucking alien, right? And so then when Vera Farmiga is like, "Oh, that's not right. That he shouldn't be doing that." And then they're like, "Oh, cuz he's not from here. He's from fucking outer space." Right? And then she's like, "Oh, I don't want to do this anymore." The old guy was like, "No, we're going to still do this."
Yeah. I when they are like, oh yeah, myths are real and everything, I was like, that's a bit hard to chew as I'm watching a Godzilla movie. I was like, that's a bit too far. And then they're like, Ghidorah is an alien. I was like, all right, what the fuck is going on here? But then I was like, I should probably do a little research because I know you and I aren't up on our Godzilla as much as we should be. And
Yeah.
apparently, in some of the movies, Ghidorah is an alien, like is from outer space.
Right.
In like some of the movies, so I guess it makes sense. It's not.
Have you ever heard of Space Godzilla?
I've heard of Mecha Godzilla.
Okay, Space Godzilla is a different thing.
Hey, Space Godzilla was in this movie for a little bit when Ghidorah picked him up and like threw him, flew him way high in the air and then dropped him. I was like, that should be a bigger bang.
Yeah, I have a problem with that. Well, fine, let's get into it now. It should have destroyed the Earth. I would just say that right now. I mean, he heated up like a fucking.
It should have been a cataclysmic event. It didn't even.
It didn't even disturb the ground Kyle Chandler was standing on.
The movie starts where the 2014 one left off, which is funny because obviously this is connected to Kong and it's connected to Kong in a couple of ways. But they start off at the 2014 one with you see the skydivers in the background, and then you just see Vera Farmiga and Kyle Chandler, and like their son's just gone.
Andrew.
Yeah, and one thing this movie does that's like from the get go, you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Is that at the end of the 2014 movie, they're like, our savior, like on newspapers, and then in this one, they're like, monarch must be held responsible.
Yeah, that's true. I
It's
didn't even think about that.
it's like a complete 180 from how that movie ended. Um, And then we start with the mom. She's worried about him. We don't really know what her relationship with the dad is, and she's hiding these emails to him. And she's like, have you been talking to your father? Like, oh, he just messaged me. I haven't responded yet. You're like, all right, is she lying? So the movie kind of slow plays the information to you, which I think probably on rewatch the movie's not as crazy. But when you're first watching it and you're introduced to all these new characters because Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen don't come back. They were going to, but they couldn't make their schedules work. When you're throwing in these new characters and you're just like, oh yeah, they just happen to be in this area. And also she's now like pretty fucking high up in Monarch for some
Right.
reason. I don't know how. She was in grad school at the time and now she's made that happen.
It was when it was because Bryan Cranston's wife died. Everyone got like an automatic promotion.
Yeah, there's a spot opening. Um, So it then cuts to something's going on at the plant, and it turns out they're in China. Their house looks pretty fucking American on the inside, so they did a good job of that. And they're like talking about this bug, and then they're like, as we like to call it, Mothra, which is I think what something you said to me, like, oh, it's coming up
Yeah.
in one of the previous episodes, and it's interesting how like it starts out, we're like, oh, we have to kill this thing because it's breaking out, and it's like they always break out. Of course, they break out, and Vera Farmiga doesn't want to kill it, which is you're like, all right, what's going on here? Because her son was killed by one of these things, so why is she so now hell bent on saving it? It doesn't really make sense, but the movie
It
eventually connects it.
it made me wonder at first, like first watch beginning was were they trying to breed something to go after Godzilla?
I don't think anyone else was but her, because Monarch was headed by Serizawa for the most part, right? Like he was the big wig, and so he was like, "No, Godzilla is kind of the answer." So we're really just trying to, contain all the rest of these. She might have been right. She might have been trying to find the answer to kill Godzilla. Her motivation still unclear. I want to bring this up now. Normally my research consists of just reading the like 50 or so IMDb facts.
But you spoke to Vera herself, and what?
No, what I want to say is that someone either at Legendary or Warner Brothers went onto IMDb and typed out about 2,000 different facts and put it in that section. And
Wow.
guys, I'm on to you. And that's craziness that you would do that. It's like insane, all the level of detail in there. And then there's like some of them too, like are
Like,
fanboy
are they
comments.
dumb? Are they dumb? Like, on the second day of shooting, Millie Bobby Brown lost her shoe.
No, they're like some of them are like, "Oh, this one is called Outpost 31 because that character was first introduced in 1931, or this one was first introduced in 1956,
Oh,
so
it's
it's called
insane.
Outpost 56." But then other ones are like, "Oh, someone asked the director on Twitter." Apparently, the director of this movie, if you ask him a question about this movie, will just answer it. So they're like, "How did Ghidorah end up frozen in Antarctica?" And he's like, "Godzilla fought him there before, and then he won the first time, and then he got frozen." It's like, well, all right, that doesn't make sense.
So wait, so it's not like in a cool like way a director answers its fans. It's like in a I got a answer for every plot hole you may come at me sort of thing.
Yeah, off the cuff, I'm just going to answer everything you're asking. Um, but then they'll be like, oh, in the movie, it might seem weird that this happened, but actually, this is the explanation for it. And it's like, you guys are just like, this is the fucking a WB intern that just decided I'm going to like get in here and do this. And it's like way too much effort. So you're not going to get a lot of fun facts out of me because I got very
I'm
overwhelmed
sure.
very quickly by how much bullshit was in there.
Yeah.
So then there's just this device, a MacGuffin, if you will,
No.
that can control. I think I used that right for the first time in the pod. We're like 300 episodes in. That can control these the Titans, and it's called the Orca because I guess it was used for whales at first. Um, and then the evil dude Charles Dance from Star Wars shows up as an evil dude, and it's just like one thing about these movies that I guess I respect. They just kill people. They have no regard for like you're just seeing a lot of deaths.
Yeah.
They don't hide it very well. They're just like a bunch of people just like one dude got shot straight in the head. He was the guy who actually had a speaking role, and we just see him die right in front of us.
Yep.
And then which by the way, now thinking back, Vera Farmiga just like okayed that.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to understand that.
Well, at that point in the movie, you think she's getting kidnapped.
No, right, but like later on when it's kind of revealed that she's okay with everything going on. I think you're supposed to think back and think, "Oh shit. She a-okayed all of those people dying." Especially when they land in Antarctica and she's like to Millie Bobby Brown, she's like, "Close your eyes, sweetie." And you hear all the murder happening outside.
Yeah.
It's not like, "Oh, she's scared." No, she's staying back with her daughter, but she okayed all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it's one of the faults actually of this movie because it's sort of how Vera Farmiga ends in this movie, right? There's no redemption possible for a character this evil. They try and do it, but like, I mean, she has to die because of what
Right.
she
Of
did.
course she does, yeah.
She has to pay. Um, So then there is a lot of expository stuff. So we have a Senate hearing, and the funniest part of that is where like they're like, "So you want us to make Godzilla our pet?" And Sarah's was like, "No, we would be his," which is
And then they
just
all
like
laugh
great.
at him.
And then they leave the Senate hearing, and they have to go to Kyle Chandler, and they're like, "Hey, your wife is out here. She got kidnapped, and they have the orca thing." Um, and this is where he says he drank a lot.
So this part kind of bothers me because he was like, it's a lot of exposition, right? He was like, uh, my wife and I built that because when we were studying whales in the Amazon. Sorry, that was a Madam Web joke I had to get off my chest. But then he goes on and he's like, we destroyed that prototype. That shouldn't have been possible. And they're like, well, they fucking rebuilt it. I was like, I don't know. They're throwing a bunch of stuff at you in like angry Kyle Chandler dialogue.
So also, like the way he describes it is they were grad students that created this in Boston. They were in San Francisco and their son died, right? That's the only backstory we really get, unless I missed something.
Nope,
And
you're right.
so then he goes on to drink a lot and then become like a wildlife photographer who's like interested in wolves. And she goes on to get an entry level position at Monarch and build her way up to where she's like basically number 3 behind Sally Hawkins and Ken Watanabe. Um, so then he gets brought on board to like help them with the orca and to find his wife. And he immediately is the smartest person on earth when dealing with this situation. He's like, guys, they're not going to go after Mothra. They know that's what you think they're going to do. They're going to go after someone else, which is just sort of a throwaway line.
But in a way, Kyle Chandler is a MacGuffin in and of himself, right? Like he has the answer to it all. And one thing actually that really bothers me is that if you think back to the timeline of this movie, how chronologically Kong Skull Island was in the 70s, so it's the first movie within the timeline. And John Goodman is like the head of it, I guess, at the time. And he's like, we're gonna go bankrupt unless we have this like win. They're like, we need to go to Skull Island. So they go. He dies. Only his assistant, I think it's his assistant or his second hand, comes back alive, right? And then I guess they got funding to keep going because of what? They brought back nothing. I don't know what they found. So they got funding to keep going up till the early 2000s, and that's when we see Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen. That's when we hear about Monarch again, this time being led by Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins. But hold on, you're telling me you're expecting me to believe that between the time of Godzilla attack and this one, which I think was 5 years, they said, he Monarch was like now a multi-billion-dollar government-funded thing because it has all those outposts. It built like 50 something outposts across the world in 5 years when it was on the point of bankruptcy.
Is that the fucking movie you want to watch? I don't know. You just have to assume it happened.
But then in the movie, they say that Monarch is on the edge of bankruptcy again.
No, what they say is it's on the edge of the military taking over because they don't like the way Monarch is running things.
Oh, okay.
Did you know that in this universe, Vera Farmiga is the daughter of Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston?
No.
I just made that up. So,
Oh my god. I was like, what the? Is that a WB intern typing that in?
I didn't read all the facts, so maybe it is. So they fly to Antarctica, the bad guys. I don't know where they got this plane. We don't know where Charles Dance gets all his fucking money to just, be a bad guy. But they take this plane. I guess maybe they took a Monarch plane because it kind of looks like one. They took a Monarch plane,
I mean,
potentially.
they came into a facility. They could have stolen anything.
So they go to Antarctica. Kyle Chandler and the rest of them see that their Godzilla is heading towards Antarctica, and they're like, all right, fuck, we need to go that way. They also see the code red Antarctica. By the way, the plane they have uh, looks like something straight out of the Avengers movie. Like, I don't understand this. Like, technology they have with that fucking thing is pretty badass. Um, so they head to Antarctica, and um, Vera and Charles Dance know that they're coming, and they're like, "All right, we have to hurry up and do this." And there's a moment where the like head commander of the military has a shot on Vera, and then Kyle Chandler's there, and he's like, "Millie Bobby Brown, come over here." She's like, gives him like a mean look, and she's like, "No," and goes back to her mom as she fucking blows the ice to let this dragon out. They then get on a plane, and Vera Farmiga like makes it so it's gonna kill her husband.
Yeah, I was confused about that too.
And then Millie Bobby Brown tries to stop that, and she stops her and makes it go after her husband again.
Yeah, because what was the point of making it go after her husband again? Because she did the orca thing where it like calmed it down, right?
Yeah, I skipped over the whole. They see Godzilla, and then Kyle Chandler tells them to lower their weapons and open the shields so they're not a threat. Which once again, MacGuffin Kyle Chandler, like, how does he know how to do that?
Yeah.
No one else
You're talking
knows to
about
do
in the
that.
you're talking about in the water, or what are you talking? Oh no, you're talking about on the in the ice.
No, in the water before they go. I think they're on like an oil tanker station or whatever, and they
Oh,
have and
the
Godzilla comes
secret
right
base
up to
under
it.
the. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we got jump scared by Godzilla. He like disappeared. They all looked, and then he.
And then Godzilla shows up, and this is one of the most badass scenes in the movie. And I'll say this now, as crazy as this movie is in the beginning, as poorly constructed as the plot is, this movie ended up getting me, and I was like, hell yeah, this is
Dude,
good
just
stuff.
all it needs is monster fights. It just fill the movie with monster fights, and we're fine. We're happy with it.
And in the middle of this, Sally Hawkins, who has been back for this movie but has said very little, and at one point must have told her agent, "Get me the hell out of the MonsterVerse," is killed.
Very quickly, very like suddenly, without like, kind of also like in the background.
Yeah, just like, I don't want to be in this anymore. Get me out of here. So the Air Force comes in and saves Godzilla because he's fighting this thing. He immediately goes for one of the necks, and I was like, that's smart. It's a good way to do it. But this dragon is bigger. The three-headed dragon is bigger, and it's got more heads. And so the Air Force comes in, saves Godzilla, saves Kyle Chandler and his crew, and so Ghidorah flies off, like most of these guys do in the beginning of the movie, to get out of here because he's like, I'm not ready. They then go back to a base, and Vera Farmiga calls in her Bond villain moment, and's like, let me explain to you my plan. And she basically, I mean, like, the Mission Impossible movies, like 5 and 6, all of these movies now are about a bad guy, Thanos, that is like, hey, the world's too populated. We need a reset. That's
Yeah.
every fucking, like, every movie uses this as a plot device now.
I like how it's also universally like a bad guy's plan, but like also it's like it's not that bad of a plan. Like enough for all these people to simultaneously have the idea of, oh, that's the path I should go down, but then it's like, no, that's bad.
The whole time Vera Farmiga is talking, I'm like, do you think she realizes how crazy her dialogue in this movie? She's like, how am I in this? Like, why did I sign up for this?
I'm so used to seeing her in the Conjuring movies. I'm almost like just waiting for Patrick Wilson to show up in this fucking film.
And then when she's done talking, Zhang Zi is like, that bitch. And I was like, yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking. And then it cuts to Vera Farmiga is about to release Rodan, as we find out, and her daughter's like, what are you doing? You got to stop this. This is at the point where we think the daughter is not cool with this, and she's like, you got to stop this. Why are you going to do this? You're going to hurt this town.
She just wants the people to evacuate safely.
Charles Dance is like, Why are you listening to a kid? Why is she able to convince you to not do this? Are you like, what is going on here that you like just fucking push the buttons? And this is a very cool scene. Well, first of all, you have a hurricane that is heading and then changing directions, heading towards Rodan. And they're like, hurricanes can't do that. So then you obviously know that this is Gadira. At this point, still Alpha Zero or Titan Zero or whatever.
Monster
Um,
Zero. It's even dumber than all the other things you said.
so and they're evacuating the town, and then there's an explosion on top of the mountain, and Rodan comes out.
Oh,
Eh,
it's so cool. It's like a volcano with lava. Oh, that was awesome.
Yep. Like Kyle Chandler's like he's Zero is coming here either for food, a fight, or to it's like what other F word could we use?
My my favorite line I have to interject is at this part where Kyle Chandler turns to Doctor, well, one of the twins. I forgot which one's Chin, which one's Ling, but he's like, "What do the legends call that one?" And she goes, "The fire demon." And he's like, and this is the best line delivery in the whole movie. That's comforting.
So then they decide, all right, we have to lure this off the peninsula or the island. I guess it's an island because it say it's an island. And they do that. And it's working. And they're trying to get to the storm to get to Gadira. They're probably not going to make it. The fire demon starts picking off planes left and right, basically kills everyone. And then they make it to Gadira. And then one of the random planes with soldiers on it's like, hey, we're heading your way. The plane's not doing very well. And it's like, well, why didn't you just stay on land? Like, Rodan's not there anymore.
Yeah, but also like you have everyone intercepting each other too, right? Because you have Kyle Chandler. I don't know. It just feels like they put a lot of people in unnecessary danger with this.
They did. Godzilla shows up and bites a head off. And I was like, that's the way to do it. Not realizing that head's going to grow back. But also the bitten off head somehow floated up on shore at the end of the movie.
Was that one, or was that a different bitten off head?
Well, it was at the Isla de Mera. So I'm pretty sure it was that one.
Oh, are they trying to tell us something?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that's in Godzilla versus Kong. It's probably in like the one that's coming out in a little bit. Do you think in the next one Godzilla and Kong team up? They have to. They have to. They have to. That's got to be it.
Well,
Which
you know
totally retcons Godzilla versus Kong, I assume.
you okay, so this next one we're gonna watch is called Godzilla versus Kong, but you know that the one coming out on your birthday is not called Godzilla versus Kong. It's called
I
Godzilla
know.
X Kong. So they fuck.
I think it's Godzilla and Kong. I think they fuck other people up, is what I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably.
Plus, Godzilla's spoken for with Mothra. And as you know from when King Kong bowed down to Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson's relationship, he doesn't step in. He's not a homewrecker.
Ah.
So Godzilla bites off a head, and then the military is like, oh, we're just going to send in an oxygen depleting bomb, which I love later when one of the soldiers is like, so you just killed the only chance to stop this thing? It's like, yeah. David Strait there just comes in to screw up and then leave. He's in like half a scene in this movie. There's so many people who are in the first one are just like, I don't want to be anywhere near this movie anymore.
What's also kind of funny is that that's Ken Watanabe also, right? Later on. But
Yeah. He was like, I'm sort of done after this.
when we have what is it called? The Oxygen Killer or whatever the stupid fucking name it came up with. They're like, we've been developing this since Godzilla came to light, and I was like, that's so stupid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't see him as a good thing. They see him
And
as
then
a
it did
threat.
nothing. It just killed a bunch of fish.
Well, it killed Godzilla almost.
Almost, yeah, I guess.
but it couldn't kill Ghidorah because Ghidorah is an alien
Oh my god, I
who
never
doesn't
thought
need
of it.
oxygen, apparently.
I didn't think of it that way.
So we then get like a smash cut of different facilities being run over and animals being released, and you're like, "Oh, I think Vera Farmiga's like, I'm not doing this," and it's because Ghidorah is starting to call them. We then see Mothra wake up, which was pretty sweet. Turns into the moth,
I like Mothra.
very beautiful. Uh, and then this is when Millie Bobby Brown gets mad at her and is like, "You said you were going to restore balance," which makes her feel like she kind of knew about this whole plan. Um, And then this is another thing about this movie about like just like destroying entire it's like destroying what London, DC,
Germany, Wyoming.
other
Yeah.
like just destroying cities right now these animals are.
I like the whole subplot of Millie Bobby Brown being like in a radio bunker and then like John McClaning it through the vents and then leaves the facility without being detected, gets all the way to fucking Boston, A-OK. I'm just like, this is crazy.
Well, they did go to a bunker right outside of Boston, I guess because that's their home.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's true.
So Kyle Chandler is about to leave to go look for his kids, and then Mothra shows up, and Mothra's so beautiful, Kyle Chandler changes his mind. And then they're like, we need to go in a submarine and nuke Godzilla to wake him back up. Um, while they're doing this, they say that Ghidorah is like just hovering over Washington, D.C. And this happened in 2019. So just Trump is president. Ghidorah, not a big deal. I'm still running things.
3 heads, small little hands.
Tiny dick compensating. So
If I had 3 heads, I could do this too.
So then there's a thing where Kyle Chandler is talking about Serizawa trying to get him to join 5 years ago. It's like, why were these grad students? I guess because they created Orca, they were like, we want you.
Yeah.
And this is when Millie Bobby Brown steals Orca and is walking to Boston. So they go down, they find a tunnel, and Dr. Stanton, played by Bradley Whitford, is like, I fucking knew it, that the hollow earth theory that he'd been talking about, which by the way, the director wanted Bradley Whitford to be like Rick from Rick and Morty. That's who he wanted him to fashion himself after, which is like the white hair and everything is like,
Oh my god.
pretty funny. So they find like what is basically the lost city of Atlantis, it looks like, and they find Godzilla resting, feeding off the radiation, and they're like, our weapons are down. And Ken Watanabe's like, I'll do it. I'll get out of here.
Get me the fuck out of this movie.
And it is actually a pretty sweet moment where he takes the bomb up there, sets it off, and then he goes up and like pets Godzilla as he's about to die. And then it cuts to Vera Farmiga realizing that Millie Bobby Brown stole the thing because all the Titans have stopped, and she's like, wait, what the fuck is happening? And she finds like the smashed, it's not a picture, it's a tablet with the family portrait on it that she has smashed, because it's like, why
Right.
would she just have a photo? And then at the same time,
Well, it's Fenway Park, isn't it? Like Millie Bobby Brown is going off of the speakers of Fenway for the
Mhm.
signal. Yeah.
who used Fenway better, the town or Godzilla King of the Monsters?
Oh, gotta be Godzilla King of Monsters. No, but they actually shot on Fenway
Fucking
in the
loser.
town, right? They shot in Fenway.
I mean, it looks like they did here too. I don't know.
It's probably CGI Fenway.
I don't know. It looked like, I don't know. Who cares? So I also have a question of like, were these underwater people that built this lair for Godzilla?
I'm pretty sure Atlantis at one point was above water.
I know. I don't think. Well, they never say this is Atlantis. They say it's this like just a civilization. But I don't understand how they built all this if it's underwater. They must have had gills.
Hollow Earth. That's all you gotta know.
I mean, Ken Watanabe does take his helmet off, and it's just like air and a lot of radiation. So I guess Godzilla surfaces and has a moment with Kyle Chandler and the crew, and he's like, "Hey, you guys are all right. All right, I'm gonna go fight this thing." And Then Ghidorah shows up at Fenway, is about to kill Millie Bobby Brown, and she decides to scream at him as if this is Stranger Things.
Puts her little hand up.
And then Godzilla shows up and saves her, and there's this like shit-eating grin moment where she turns around and smiles at Godzilla, like, "Yeah, my boy's here to save me."
Yeah. The guy who killed my brother.
It's a
Thank God.
yeah, it's a weird moment. And then we find out that Godzilla is like, they're like, wow, he's really fucking powerful right now. It's like, oh, he's been supercharged, and in fact, he's going to explode in 12 minutes. So you guys really have to get the orca and get out of there. Um, then Mothra shows up and she's helping out, but then Rodan shows up, and that's
Dude.
Ghidorah's boy.
How fucking stoked were you when Rodan seemingly has the upper hand over Mothra and then fucking sting her through the heart?
It's pretty great. It was pretty great. And then Vera Farmiga shows up, and you're like, all right, what is happening here? And she's like, I'm gonna rescue you guys. Let's drive off. And this is a moment, a plot device, screenwriting that I always hate in a movie,
Sure.
where O'Shea Jackson Jr. says, man, if I had you two as parents, I would run away from home too. And they're like, what did you say? And he said, I would run away from home. And they're like, home! Because apparently Millie Bobby Brown went to home, and that's like that led. I mean, so poor.
So I was watching this with Taylor, and she had a good point about this. She said, how did they keep their home in Boston? And also, like, because they had the one that it was in China that Vera Farmiga that we saw Millie Bobby Brown and Vera in, right? And then Kyle Chandler's taking fucking pictures in the fucking, Wyoming of the wolves, and they're separated. So they're apparently living in these two separate locations working, and they just keep their home in Boston.
I assume the reason Monarch is going bankrupt is because it pays so well, and they didn't feel the need to sell like a prime real estate. That was in like walking distance from Fenway.
I
It's
know.
like a nice little brownstone, I think. Yeah, you keep that. So then the fighting here is just chef's kiss. Ghidorah eats electricity and shoots it. You talked about Mothra stabbing Rodan. Ghidorah carries Godzilla up in the air and drops him. And then is gonna
should have destroyed the earth with that one. I mean, Godzilla glowed red like a fucking meteor.
Mm-hmm.
That's how high he went.
It was pretty sweet looking. Nothing in Kong Skull Island looked as cool as like this fight scene at the end. The fight scene in Antarctica, like all this shit was badass. Mothra then gets in the way and takes an electric charge. And then
Godzilla's down. Godzilla is also down, and so that's the time Mothra decides to give her life to Godzilla.
I think Mothra's still alive though.
In spirit?
I don't know. I mean, we don't see her die.
That's right. She just evaporates.
I think she just sent some stuff that fell down on Godzilla and healed him a little bit.
That was her whole body.
Do you think Mothra's dead in this universe?
Oh yeah. Which I don't think
so.
was the smartest move they should have done, but yeah, I do.
I don't think she's dead. So anyway, Kyle Chandler is like, we need to fix the orca so we can buy him some time. And then Vera Farmiga's like, I'm going to have to sacrifice myself because I am responsible for the deaths of millions and trillions of property damage. So I really can't live and face, I'm not going to jail. So she decides to drive off with the orca. And then at her death, long live the king, which is just ridiculous. Ridiculous line reading, but great for this movie. And then Godzilla shows up and explodes, killing Ghidorah. And you're like, oh, he's dead. But then you see Ghidorah's head pop out. But no, Godzilla is slurping his head from the neck like it's a noodle.
It's pretty fucking awesome, huh?
and then shoots the blue stuff out of it to like evaporate the head. And I think this is at the point where Bradley Whitford's like, all right, I'm glad he's on our side. And Zhang Zi's like, for now, for
Yeah.
now. Um, and then all the Titans circle around Godzilla, and you're like, oh, there's not enough time for a fight. So clearly they're going to bow, and they do. They're like, you're our new guy. And then there's the credits, and then the stinger.
So there's a stinger?
Yeah. Okay, so you didn't see it.
No.
Yeah, they go back to where Rodan came out of the mountain, and this guy's talking to Charles Dance, and is like, "Hey, yeah, this thing we found. Life kind of sucks here right now because of what happened, but we found this thing, so hopefully you can give us a lot of money for it." And they go into this room, and it's just the head that was chopped off in a room. I don't know how they got it there. That head's pretty fucking big.
Oh, okay. It was the head. Kind of like when they went into that secret oil base and you see the Muto there,
And
right?
then the movie ends with Charles Dance saying, "We'll take it." So that's obviously leading to some movie down the road.
Okay, so he takes the head as to like maybe resurrect Ghidorah, something like that, right?
Yeah, which is why I think maybe in the next one, Godzilla and Kong are gonna have to fight it together. Maybe it'll have 4 heads.
That'd be cool.
They
That'd
at one
be
point
cool.
call it Hydra, but when Hydra's head is chopped off, it doesn't grow back a head; it grows back 2 heads.
Yeah. They didn't know what they were getting into though. And so yeah, so when this movie ends, it's like I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this. No, that's not true. I'm pretty sure Millie Bobby Brown is in the next one. But I don't remember Kyle Chandler being in the next one.
Well, we'll find out in less than a week when we do this next one, so I'm not too worried about it. I gotta say, this movie starts off crazy, and I was like, this is real bad. It's got real bad ratings. But like one of the commenters on IMDb said, it's a Godzilla movie. I saw a bunch of good fights. What else should I have expected from this? And that's true. Like some of the best like huge fights I've seen in a movie, like kind of more entertaining than like big Marvel fights, you know what I mean? Cuz it's just the scale is so big and you can do so much with it. Like at one point Mothra shoots the stuff that traps all 3 of Ghidorah's heads against a building, and then it gets one loose, and Godzilla grabs that, and then instead of just using to his advantage the fact that the heads are trapped, just takes Ghidorah through a freaking building.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Antarctica fight, like, just I could
Yeah.
watch 2 hours of those 2 things fighting.
No. I agree with you. It's awesome. That's what I'm saying. You fill it with monster fights, you'll fill the seats. You got our attention. Have you seen Godzilla -1?
No, I haven't.
So I wasn't sure if you've remedied that, but clearly not. There was no other monsters in that movie besides Godzilla, right?
Right.
And that movie was still really good for a Godzilla movie. But dude, if Godzilla -1 had any other fucking monster in it, that'd be so cool. I'd love to see like a sequel. What do you think a Godzilla -1 sequel would be called?
Well, it depends on which way you're going, right? So, like, it could either be Godzilla -2 or it could be Godzilla. Just depends on how the math flushes out.
Godzilla 0.
I don't even think you have to say the 0,
No.
honestly.
Hmm.
Last thing
So
before we end this, one fun fact I did read before I just gave up on the whole operation is that Gareth Edwards was originally going to direct this, but he wanted to back out because he had directed Godzilla and then Rogue One. He's like, I need to do something different besides like blockbuster franchise stuff. And so that would have been very interesting. And one thing we didn't talk about is so like the tone from Godzilla to Kong is completely different. The tone sort of goes back again where there is this it's not it's like a lighter tone, I guess, but it's not fun. It's not funny. There's not like a lot of one-liners as much.
So I'm curious to see Kong versus Godzilla. I've seen Godzilla versus Kong, right? But it's been so long that it was back when it first came out, and I don't even remember it. I want to say that this one is a nice combination of the two, because you would think it would be, right, bringing in both the characters from the different movies. But because it has Millie Bobby Brown in it, I think it's more of a Godzilla movie than a Kong. So maybe it's more tone Godzilla. I don't know.
Well, once again, we're going to find out in a week, so there's no need to stress about it. Thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and we finally watched
Godzilla, King of Monsters.